Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and another patron requested movie review as part of my Patreon week. That's it, a week-long kind of series of videos devoted to my patrons, people who literally just show the greatest support for my channel. Again, can't thank them enough. I'm amazed, always amazed each month when their names keep appearing on that Patreon list. It boggles my brain. But yeah, Mike Governale has requested Apocalypto, the Mel Gibson film from 2006. My first memory of this film, when it came out, I worked at the cinema in Warrington, when I lived in Warrington at the time, and I remember being on box office. We were serving tickets. I wasn't actually serving the tickets, but I was talking to a friend who was on there serving, and literally these 14 or so teenagers all came in, proper rabble-rousers, and ordered tickets. They all ordered a ticket for Apocalypto. They'd all clearly heard that it was like this violent, extreme film. It was rated an 18. So they all come in and get tickets. And then literally as the last guy has bought his tickets, somebody mentioned that it had subtitles. And all of these idiots got their money back. Literally 14 or so kids just kind of trying to get their money back. Teenagers, late teenagers. But yeah, for some reason, whenever I think of this film, I think of that story. Felt the need to share it, but there you go. Anyway, Apocalypto follows this guy called Jaguar Paw, who is part of this tribe in a rainforest somewhere. We see life with them for a bit. We see his friends, his family, the people that he lives with in the village, and they are suddenly abducted. Basically their village is invaded by the Mayans. The Mayans kind of take them to their city that is filled with kind of debauchery and just decadence and really great architecture and amazing costumes, it must be said, lots of colour. But yeah, this is like really the kind of crest of culture within this region, the Mayans obviously. And basically Jaguar Paw is going to be sacrificed as part of their worship to the gods. He escapes, and the final third of the film becomes a chase movie, a very violent chase movie, kind of a mix between Predator and some other action kind of movie. But it's an incredible piece of work. It really is. It's very visceral filmmaking. It's very visual. Mel Gibson makes the choice, as he did with Passion of the Christ, to try and use the language. I mean, I don't know how close they can be to actual Mayan language or whatever, because I know it's a dead culture, I believe. I don't know world history all that well, but I do know that, yeah, this is a film essentially about the destruction of the Mayans. And what Mel Gibson does, typically Mel Gibson here, is he litters certain things throughout the movie that suggest, I think from his mind, when you try and look at this film from, well, okay, this is what happens in the film, but why is that there? And more importantly, who put that there? And in which case, what does it mean? Bearing in mind it's Mel Gibson who put everything here, I think this is really a film about how God, the Christian God, Mel Gibson's God, said, Mayans, your time is up, and my time is coming. You know, so we see scenes throughout the film where essentially prophets kind of come. There's a sequence with this child. Jaguar Paw has some dreams as well that point towards the future, and he also comes face to face with this child who gives a very kind of dark prophecy about essentially the end times for the Mayans. She basically predicts that, again, this is their time, it's over. But you get the sense that this is kind of God speaking through this child, like a prophet, like the prophets of the Old Testament, you know, before Christ, before John the Baptist, before them, like those prophets of the Old Testament that talked about God and what he was going to do. And I feel like within this film is essentially what Mel Gibson's doing. Because again, I'm not a history buff. I don't know much about the Mayans, but I'm under the illusion most people don't. That it's actually a dead culture that, yeah, we don't quite know what happened to them. So much of this is speculation. Much of it is fantasy on Gibson's part. But I think that's where he's coming from. That's the way I read it. That's what I see from it. That, you know, and we end the film basically on Christian invaders, Christian missionaries, kind of, you know, we Jaguar and these two people who are pursuing him kind of come to the beach, and coming up in a boat is a bunch of men in robes carrying a cross, and we know that, oh right, okay, this is the missionaries, they're coming over. This is essentially, you know, we're seeing the Mayan culture die at this point, and the birth of the Christian way of life coming into the country. So that's essentially what the film is about in its broadest scope. But in its most immediate scope, it really is just a film about a man who is trying to save his wife and child, and get away from the enemy, you know, in the most violently spectacular way that Mel Gibson is kind of famed for. You know, you think Braveheart, you think those battle sequences, very bloody, very violent, Passion of the Christ. It's something that kind of runs throughout Mel Gibson's body of work. This idea that in order to get to salvation, to get to redemption, you know, to get to the heavenly realm, or however you want to put it, you have to go through that trial, through the valley of the shadow of death, so to speak, through violence. It's the violence, it's the pain that kind of molds you and turns you into the ultimately the man that is going to be a man of salvation and of redemption and things like that. It's a common theme throughout Gibson's work. It's something he clearly likes to put in his movies, and yeah, like I say, this is no different. If you don't like what Gibson did with Braveheart or Passion of the Christ, films like that, then this ain't going to be for you. This ain't going to win you over. Like I say, it's incredibly violent. There's some moments in here that I just totally forgot about, to be honest. And I'm watching it again this time around. I was just like, oh, like, you know, arrows going straight through people's faces, you know, traps that Jaguar has laid that just put spikes right through people. And yeah, Gibson doesn't hold back. But there you go. That's Gibson for you, full on. From a visual standpoint, it is very beautiful to look at as well. Certain scenes when Jaguar is running through the rainforest. One scene in particular where he's being chased by a jaguar, which he then leads to attack his enemy very creatively. The whole thing actually where Jaguar takes out his enemies is really creative, like the use of the toad, the poison from the toad. It's just, yeah, it shows the resilience of this guy and the fact that he knows his own environment and he can use it against his enemy. But all that stuff it's beautifully shot. It looks great. And even though it's kind of excessively violent at times, it is never less than beautiful to look at in a twisted kind of way. The film's got quite a nice score to it as well. It kind of reminded me of the music to The New World, like this film, in fact, in many ways, in certain sections, kind of reminded me of Terrence Malick's The New World, just the way it's shot, things like that. And yeah, the score's by James Horner. I checked that out afterwards, you know, saw his name in the credits and realised, oh, okay, it's James Horner. He did do the score to The New World, so there you go. The film has a very kind of neat 3-act structure in which we get like the opening 25 minutes, half an hour, that is really about this village, about Jaguar and his friends and relations. And I think it's good that Gibson spends time doing that. You know, he spends time showing us these people and really showing us that they have very similar problems, you know, despite the fact that you know, they don't live in big cities with electricity and all that. They have very similar problems, family dynamics to contend with, that anybody anywhere at any time does. You know, you see this one guy who's kind of got a bit of a problem with his in-law, his mother-in-law. You know, she's after a son or a daughter. She wants a child, and she kind of bullies him a bit, to be honest, you know, makes him feel useless and stuff like that. And it's amusing in parts, the way that his friends kind of treat him and get him to at one point eat the testicles of a pig, I think it is. But it's disgusting, but it's funny, and it's just like I say, it's not anything I'd have to contend with, or you, but the emotional stuff, the family dynamics, I still feel very present, very of today. So it just makes these people really relatable. So I'm glad that Gibson does that, spends the time doing that, and it makes you kind of feel for certain characters as well, particularly that guy, you know, the one who's getting bullied. He, you know, spoiler alert, he doesn't survive this film. He goes out fairly heroic, but it's just when he goes, you kind of feel bad for the guy because he never got treated particularly well. He didn't get particularly well respected, but he did prove himself as someone who, you know, is a defender of his tribe, who looks out for his friends and stuff. So I cared about the guy. So all I'm saying is, yeah, Gibson does a good job of doing that, of making me care about these guys, so that when we get into the second act, which is the Mayan stuff, which is essentially a prisoner of war movie with added sacrifices thrown in for good measure, it does make you want these guys to get out. And then obviously once they escape, it just becomes an all-out action fest. It's a chase movie in which, yeah, like I say, a bit kind of Predator-esque, in which this guy is being pursued, but he then turns the tables on his enemy in the jungle. So yeah, very clear 3-act structure that just does a very good job of telling the story it wants to tell very well. There's a rather touching moment as well with with that said mother-in-law, where when they're all kind of taken, they're then put on the market as slaves to be sold, and nobody wants her because she's old, she's past it, and she's essentially just let go. And it's this moment of realization where she looks at the son-in-law, who's kind of been carted off with the rest of the guys, where she realizes that after all the ribbing that she'd given to him and said that, you know, told him all the time that he's useless and this, that and the other, she suddenly realizes that in the eyes of the society around her, she is useless, or certainly the society that she's been taken into. She's been taken out of a society where she was big and powerful and seen as something of a head of the family, and put into this other culture where actually she can't even be bought as a slave. And it's quite a touching moment, and it's all told in this look between her and the son-in-law, and you realise like that's it for her. So it's a good film. I like all the different sections in it. Like I say, the family building, the prisoner of war stuff, and then the all-out action fest at the end, which is my favourite section, it must be said, just from the sheer kind of brutality and body count and inventive ways of killing people. It's a great film. It's entertaining, highly entertaining, and if you want to dig deeper, there is stuff there. If you're someone who likes your film to mean something, then I do think that the film is trying to say something, as I said, from Mel Gibson's perspective. Whether you buy into that perspective or not is up to you, but I do think that is there. So yeah, I really like the film. I give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's great. Yeah. So Mike, thank you for recommending this one. Really great choice. Anyone who's watched this video, thank you for watching, but please do leave your comments for Mike and myself in the comment section down below, so we can know what you thought about Apocalypto as well. Yeah, thank you Mike, thank you everyone out there for watching, and until next time, cracking.